Trading the foreign exchange market carries high risk and may not be suitable for all investors. Trading on margin, utilizing leverage can carry an even higher level of risk that can lead to a complete loss of investment funds. So before deciding to trade the foreign exchange market or using any of our software alert products, you should carefully and diligently consider your personal investment objectives, level of experience, and risk tolerance. There is a possibility that you could potentially sustain significant loss. You should not invest any capital or trade that you cannot afford to lose. It is your responsibility to be aware of and understand all risks associated with foreign exchange trading and to seek professional advice from an independent certified financial advisor if you have any doubts. Auvoria Prime does not exercise trading authority over your trades. You and you alone exercise discretionary trading authority over every trade.
Let's go and take a look at, always want to make sure for the Forex calendar here, you're on the forwarding week, a mistake I often make myself. So let's go to the next week. So essentially, let's take a look at the calendar here. Today's the 20th, Saturday. Starting off the 21st through the 27th. So we got the calendar lined up here. All right, let's see. Uncheck. We only care about the red folder events. There we go. All right. So coming up next week, the big one, Tuesday, which is interesting because we have the testimony, and a lot of times this is where I'll actually open the folder, by the way. Yeah, so this is the monetary policy before the Senate Banking Committee. Do keep in mind that in terms of central bankers, I had the opportunity for a little bit of time yesterday to get a couple of questions in on a call I had with one of my trading buddy friends that used to run a big New York trade desk, Tommy Thornton. Actually conferenced me in with one of his really good friends who used to run the trade desk for Bridgewater Associates, which is one of the biggest hedge funds in the world. So I figured I'd just ask him a bunch of questions about quantitative easing, central banks, just sticking to a macro level. One, he doesn't see any corrections this year in equities until the fourth quarter of this year, which I thought was interesting because we're getting kind of bubblicious now, and it sort of flies in the face of what I've been saying. But I have nowhere near the experience of this individual. He also said that if there isn't a chance, as I've talked a lot about the last 6 months, the Federal Reserve turning off the quantitative easing, or the what I like to call just the cash falling down out of the skies into primary dealer accounts, thus levitating most assets. He doesn't see it happening until the fourth quarter. To what degree the correction is, it even may not happen, right? We could be both dead wrong, right? So it's got to look at your options. I think that was an interesting conversation I had, but so just to take that for what it's worth. But next week, as far as news related stories, anytime any central banker, regardless of who it is, folks from the European Central Bank, ECB, folks from the Bank of Japan, Bank of Canada, and Bank of the UK, Bank of England, BOE. Anytime any of these central bankers are talking and it's some sort of where there's a Q&A, also opens up an opportunity for the occasional question to slip through and the answer to disrupt currency and or equity markets. So you always want to be careful about that. And next Tuesday and Wednesday represents one of those potential opportunities. All right, let me see here. Do ask the questions, by the way, guys, in the Q&A window. If you want me to answer them, just put them in the Q&A window. If you guys just want to answer each other, you could just put the questions in the chat window if you want. I'll scroll through them. But we have had, for those of you that are not builders like myself, I let the rest of the team help that. We have had almost 2,500 people come into this organization just in the last month. I mean, it has been a bananas amount of growth. And I mean, a lot of that is attested to the quality of the products, the smoothing out, if you will, of the products, the newer versions or updated versions, and or us continuing to get technology better in the back office. But I'll tell you, with that type, it is a risk issue as far as I'm concerned if you guys are not getting in touch with all of these people and either forcing them to my call or at the very least watch the just a quick looking at the notes or just watching the recordings that get put up, I think we're all doing our subscriber base a big injustice. I cast this from the mountaintop a lot, but I think it's a very big deal. It's why I constantly talk about it. So make sure you're getting in touch with everybody up and down, in order to get that done. So let's take a quick look at the charts. I'm not going to spend a lot of time in this day because I see the questions piling up, but I'll make sure to do that. Here is, since everybody's sort of in the room here now, let me post this because I think this is really good to always start off with. I have like a bazillion bookmarks you guys can see. The social media channels, this is our good back office link, if you will. Let me post this to everybody. Make sure you're getting everybody subscribed to all of this. There you go. It's in the chat window now. Go to the charts. S&P, lots of dojis. I think we're taking a little pause from the absolute blistering nosebleed growth we've had in equity valuations over the course of the last almost a year. Taking a look at NASDAQ, same thing. We have support levels that haven't even shown up on a daily chart, which kind of stinks. So a lot of our supports are much lower levels. I'm not going to get too much into that. Let's take a look at the DXY dollar. Again, between our support levels here, not going to spend a lot of time on it. Notice how in this particular case, the 50 MA is really holding us in a tighter range than normal. Bunch of dojis. Again, I think everybody's sort of like taking a breath, if you will, with vaccines coming out and stimulus packages hitting in varying degrees depending on the country. Maybe the final removal of the UK from the European Union, maybe that all gets smoothed out. It's just, it's a little nice, quite frankly, to have a break from the bananasness of the last 12 months, and it actually in excess of 12 months at this point. So, don't necessarily, volatility will be back. So please do not get complacent. And keep in mind, guys, get your calendars out for the 24th of April. I'm not going to go through the calendar right now, but the 24th of April, we're going to have a big event that's going to be broadcast out of a studio in Nashville, and yours truly will be showing up this time to talk probably about an hour on everything from brokers to risk management to, motivational stuff, as far as something that I would teach, my son Evan to learn, and all of the things that has to do with risk management and learning how to trade and so forth, regardless of whether you're accepting trades or you're moving into a different realm with a product like Arrow, which I would have as part of the bench, and beginning to take manual trades. This is all going to be really important stuff that hopefully every single one of our subscribers can view at some point, whether it's the event live or the recording. But spread the word on that way we can have everybody ready to go. All right. What else I want to say about this? It's pretty much it. Let's take a look at the Euro US dollar. Not much to say from Tuesday either. Notice how these lines in the opposite side of this are holding as well, the 50 days, keeping it under cover, if you will. Okay. Euro JP cable here. Notice how we've actually settled down to, with a doji, right at an important level. So you have to go all the way back. And then honestly, when I see stuff down here, we've already dropped below a pretty decent support line. Looks like we're going to be headed to this area next. I don't know when, how long, so forth. Just understand this isn't a trending pattern. In the case of this particular currency now, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Arguably 5 what's called one time framing down. This just establishes more of a powerful type of trend. Anytime you see this kind of pattern, usually it will cool out for a little bit, especially if it's coming into a big area of resistance. So whereas in this particular case, once I saw a couple of these candles forming. If I was getting alerts about this currency, or if it was trading this in some sort of product that is more cost averaging and not a variable, right, which is more trend following, it has the ability to morph slightly, I would not be accepting a lot of long trades through this period of time in any pattern I'm going to show you like this, right? Because just the odds of win rates are much lower. Now, I've gone into this exhaustively in previous presentations out there. So I would encourage you, if you want to look in more into that, go back to some of my previous talks on this. I think at some point I'm going to have those all cataloged, where I have, it's almost like the Encyclopedia Britannica, right? Where you look at the index to see which one of like 100 volumes has a particular discussion on that. You could just go back and time code it. Euro JPY, again, daily chart. Always start with the dailies. Bigger time frames. Each one of these candles represents a single day red up. Red up, that's funny. Green up, red down. Okay, for those that are new to this, not really, it's not as important that you understand technical analysis to the degree that I talk about, but just can at least from a big picture standpoint to start to get, somewhat connected to that, and our sort of wealth theme that Auvoria Prime is building into everything in terms of our additional products. We're going to begin to show you guys, all different aspects of building one's own wealth. And I think a big part of that is just understanding, at least at the very basic level, a macro understanding of candlestick and or technical analysis. That's why I talk about this. We'll go more into detail as we get a little further in that type of educational program. Shout out to Susan and the team. I'll tell you, tremendous work these guys have done. GBP USD, again, breaking out daily chart. Let's go all the way back to the weekly to see where we are. Kind of levels that I called out, that we would just almost zoom up to these levels, and it's been a pretty good zipper, which is just nothing more than a fairly fast lift that takes place back into or down into another area of support or resistance as we're seeing here. So I would expect a pause somewhere in this area. There's probably other stuff lining up in this area, Fibonacci retraces and all of that just add to areas of what they call confluence, which is just a sophisticated term for a grouping of things that show up at a particular level, or an amalgamation of other indicators that show confluence. All right. Got a request for GBP Swiss. You think I put this in the list, didn't I do that last week? Let's put it in. Let's keep this one in, right? All right. Okay, so looking at the weekly first, let's drop back to the daily. When you can't see anything on the screen and you're up sort of in nosebleed section here, I'll always drop back to the weekly chart so we can see what's going on. And as you can see, and I'm not sure if I talked about this last week, because currencies all seem to run together, but I figured this would be a magnet, this whole area, and we zippered right up to it. So this is the power, support, and resistance lines, and now we're coming up against a big one here. So I would expect this to pause, at least for a couple days. I could be wrong, but typically when you come up against big levels of resistance like this, it's usually going to hold it for a bit. But this is another good example of what's called a zipper. It's just a quick, swift move up to test another area, or down to test some area of support versus up here to test area of resistance. Let's take a look at the AUD stuff. Euro US, I'm sorry, let's do USD JPY. Notice we broke out, and again, we're looking at weeklies here because we got sort of a larger time frame move, but came up against a pretty big area of resistance on the daily. See how it just literally just turned right around at this area. These are how effective these squeeze zone levels are. And by the way, this is all Dastan stuff, right? Not the green line or the fancy triple moving averages here, which is just simple SMAs. But all of the orange and or red lines done a really, really good job of identifying really solid support and resistance lines as you're moving through daily, weekly, or hell, even all the way down to a 5-minute analysis, right? But just looking at the weekly chart on this, this was a beautiful example as I've continued to keep this line, albeit they drawn that well. Let's drop it down here. This is a really good example of a trend down that broke. And if this trend is really put in over a period of time, as we certainly have seen on the weeklies, once this trend breaks, oftentimes you'll see it come back down. I know it's kind of hard to see, but you'll see it come back down and test the top of that trend line, which will, in some cases, act as support and bounce it again. So just recognize that. If I was to continue to draw the line down here, you could see how we came down and tested the top of this trend line. Right? Doesn't have to be perfectly drawn. As you'll see, a lot of my stuff sort of half-assed, but the whole idea is just to be able to identify and envision a lot of this. Draw the lines, do whatever you need to. The whole point is the more you understand what could possibly happen, the more you're doing the most important thing, and that's understanding the risk associated with it. Steve, on the AUD weekend, I'm stuck in some AUD trades where GBP and VB went short on the AUD and it went the other way. Yeah. So, it happens, welcome to cost averaging software, Judson. So the key to that is that, if it's an automated system that's trading for you, you have to let it play itself out. But if it's something where you're accepting trades for, my suggestion would be to go in and just, begin to learn a little more about technical analysis. It really can be as simple as just the broad perspective that I'm presenting. Notice I don't get too deep into just moving averages, right? Support and resistance via the squeeze zones and the volume, which isn't really that big of a deal as far as I'm concerned, because I can't put any aggregated volume analysis on this or sort of volume profiling because I don't really trust the data, which has nothing to do with trading view. It's just, I just really wish currencies were all executed on a centralized exchange, like almost other products out there in commodity currency or commodity and futures land. It would be a much more quality data, in my opinion. AUD CHF. Did I already show that? I think I did, right? No, I didn't. Let's take a look at that. Okay. So notice, again, we have to, looking at the daily chart here, we're in no man's land. So you have to really, you can see how we completely broke out of this. Keep in mind, for what it's worth, guys, the most of the Aussie people put in a hell of an effort through this pandemic, and I, my hat's off to this country for really sort of keeping it, in good shape, and it's reflecting in their currency across almost all pairs, right? So a lot of that has to do with how well these guys have managed the pandemic. So cheers, mate. But let's take a look at the weekly chart. So notice this example of what I've often talk about whenever you come up against an important area. You see how you had a doji right up against this, which was arguably some pretty solid resistance, right in this 6,800 or 68, 67, 50-ish area, maybe a little higher, maybe like the 68, 70-ish area, right? Pretty solid. I mean, look at how much we stopped and turned around and or completely turned around these levels. It would argue for a pause, right? And this is the single doji candle that printed here, which is an indecision, meaning that something else. But notice we had three Doji's print. This wasn't one time framing down because they were within each other's ranges of their wicks up and down. Okay. So, but notice we came up against the line again and we printed another doji. Typically, when you see this happen, the third day, or in some cases, the fourth day, it's going to be a blast off, right? You don't want to be in front of this. This is not something you ever want to be accepting any trades against this train because you can get run over. And the win rates historically, I don't care what chart you put this on, if it's Apple Computer, if it's gold, if it's oil, some sort of currency, you name it. This is a blast off technical setup. So put this picture in your brain, right? Burn it into the mental part of your brain on something like this. You never want to step in front of a trade like this, okay? Especially since there's a lot of people like, well, why didn't it stop and turn around? Think about it. Over this whole period of time, what are we looking at here? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, 6+ months. We've come up against this area and it's reversed. So what's that telling you? It's telling you that the stops are building up here. There's a bunch of them. Keep in mind, there are programs out there designed just for stop hunting. They want to look for the biggest pockets of where stops are placed, right? Limit orders, essentially, right? A whole pile of limit orders, and they just go blast them. Now, a lot of cases, you'll see something like this blast the stops more in futures land related indexes, and then it'll just reverse right back down. But again, don't want to step in front of the train on something like this. Getting a lot of exotic currency requests, you guys. I love it and all, but I mean, are you guys actively trading a lot of this stuff? I just seems like some real exotics you guys are asking about. What I would probably do, honestly, with a lot of these questions I get consistently, you guys can afford TradingView. Set your charts up just like this. I think it's only like 15, 20 bucks a month for this version. It's actually pretty good software. You're getting basically Bloomberg level quality for like 20 bucks a month. It's crazy. Okay, so hopefully we've addressed the AUD question. We delete that. So Norman asked, can we use the same EA at the same time? Can you clarify on that question, Norman? Clarify that, please. I'm not sure what. Or just pretend I'm stupid and ask it in a different way. That. GBP USD. I haven't spent too much time on that. Let's just get that addressed again. Arguably headed to this area. Keep in mind we're on the weekly chart here. Probably gonna zipper up to this, maybe pause at this area. This is one of those things where it's tough to take shorts until it hits a level like this, right? Really don't want to step in front of the train because it's smooth sailing, if you will, all the way up to the next area. Telegram link to all is in the chat window. Anonymous. Okay, so I got that question answered. Marilyn asked, some time ago, I believe you shared a resource to view all Forex pairs volatility from greatest to least. Was it? Yeah, where is that? I think I have that in the Auvoria folder somewhere. Let's see. It is. Is it Forex Analytics? By the way, these Forex Analytics guys, you guys are really good. This whole website's run by an ex-Marine in Arizona. Goes by a name Pipzar on Twitter if you guys want to follow him. He actually put some really good stuff out. I don't think I have that. Sorry. I don't know what to do with it. You only have so many bookmarks, right? If I'm at a max level of a Euro GBP buys on variable and gearbox, any ideas on how to come out of drawdown? I'm outside the US. I don't have the option to choose trades and directions. So this is a really good question that basically the question is, if I'm using an automated version of the software, how do I get out of drawdown? So the first thing is, you always want to ask yourself, can I afford to lose the capital that's being traded in this account? If the answer is no, Um, you shouldn't be trading live money in the first. You should be trading on demo until you can afford it or build up to that account. Either way, I break from a lot of the developers and a lot of the team leaders in that we don't recommend to our team anybody trade less than $1,000 unless you're going to trade Arrow, in which case you're in much better control over what gets executed in your account because it's you. Um, Provided you've learned, all of Nathan's strategies, or at least focus on the ones that have the highest win rate. But outside of that, I never will make the recommendation other than it's difficult for that situation because I'm not smarter than the software, and neither is anybody else, maybe other than the developers. I'm not willing to step in front of that and say that I'm smarter. So, what I will tell you has happened in many cases, provided the drawdowns weren't that big, the software usually pulls out of stuff like that over a period of time, which is varying degrees all across the spectrum of time. But we saw a lot of it where Einstein and Alexander, given enough time, pulled out of that, right? And you will always have periods of time, which is probably difficult for people to understand, but you will always have different periods of time where currencies just go crazy and they don't act like, GBP NZD in the spring is a great example. Blew out a lot of accounts, okay? A lot of live accounts because it just went nuts. And some of the other ones were essentially pin action off of that to move, as we saw in everything. So, just it it always should have one reflecting in essentially looking in the mirror. I always like that joke where I don't know if you guys have seen this picture. I can't seem to find it. Maybe somebody could find it for me. Or Kermit the Frog's looking in this smoky mirror, and the vision of him. This is a trader-based picture where he's in the mirror. It's talking about risk management and all that. And then there's the alter ego of Kermit the Frog in the mirror where he has spiked hair and earring in. He's like, forget risk management, bro. Lambos. So I really wish I could find this picture. I'd put it up because it's awesome. But it is the absolute sort of alter ego of risk that people face. It's a great example of all this, and I'm getting off on a bit of a tangent. But I think it's important. If you guys are ever bored, get into the R Wall Street Bets. All these nutcases around the globe that tried to take on a bunch of hedge funds and won for a few days until the hedge funds came in and crushed them all. And see some of these posts and they're just absolute blatant disregard. Unless everybody posting these big numbers and accounts were lying, which is possible, and it was fake news. I routinely saw people take $1 million of their money, maybe they have a lot more than $1 million, right, and stick it into GameStop at $250 a share. Take a look at GameStop now. Things trade into 40s. So they basically lost most of their money. And they kept saying stuff like, we're not going to sell, we're going to hold. And, don't be that person, right? Be the guy that maybe took 10 grand of your $1 million and threw it in GameStop. And if it blew up on you, you're like, oh, so be it, right? Small pieces, risk management. In any case, so I do not recommend iPhone user stepping in front of the software. But if you want to do a little bit of a deeper dive, one thing I will show you guys, just to my typical tangential nature here. If you go into Market Watch, this is my Telegram channel, you can go in and you can actually sort the channel by files, stuff like that. I got a lot of shared links in here, but if you want to go into the photos, you can actually go through and see the candle analysis. You can see, I put up Elliott wave, keep in mind with this Elliott wave analysis that I posted, just, I don't expect anybody to memorize it. I don't really use Elliott wave analysis unless a lot of other stuff is failing. I'll look at the counts. Okay. But just take that with a grain of salt, please. Do note, I think the most important thing you guys should be studying is the patterns, continuation, bilateral patterns, reversal. I talk about a lot of this stuff, but these are really stuff that should be memorized in your quests to be technical analysis master. Also, in addition to that, is the Forex cheat sheet, so you can understand what goes on globally. This basically is an entire macroeconomics course on one piece of paper. It's really that simple. It's just the relation of the balance of payments and how things can affect it. Things like if a country goes more into debt, right? Good old US with the trillions that are adding up. I don't even want to look at that clock. It freaks me out. But it's a devaluing event for our underlying currency. There's lots of good stuff in here, so just make sure you peel through it. That answers your question. Next question is the fancy triple moving average is something that you guys can actually put on your chart. It is the brown, yellow, and green lines here. There's a guy that actually builds these stuff, and a lot of times instead of going in and building us, because I'm not a coder, I just take some of the best built code and overlay it on my charts. I have a whole other futures trading system on another computer in the other side of my office. I'm not live on the camera today because the office is a mess. We're doing some painting and stuff in here and getting rid of some things. But I look at all of these moving averages as important to technical analysis because many times things will completely stop and turn around on these lines. So you want to be aware of where they are. AUD-CHF, did I show that one already? Let's take a look. Yeah, I already talked about this. I'm not sure if you came in late. The Aussies have really been putting in a great effort in their country, quite frankly, and it's reflecting in the ripping of their currency in relation to a lot of stuff. Right up to this area. Go all the way to a weekly analysis to see this. I'll do NZD in a second here. I'll just delete some of these questions. NZD, our favorite nutcase. There we go. Now, in this particular case, I would expect that this whole 73, 70-ish area is going to be a magnet for this now that it's broken out to a certain degree. Keep minus the weekly charts. We're looking at daily, right? Coming up against this line. We probably, and a lot of this obviously is going to continue to be dependent upon the devaluing of the dollar, right? But given that is the case, I would expect this to blast above this. If you're trading this and we get above this, okay, notice we've already peekabooed above it. Now, we get above this, it's probably going to blast. So I really wouldn't want to be stepping in front of the train accepting shorts because we've come up against it a couple of times. If we drop back to the weekly, we can see that we may have a quick rip up to test the top of this area from 2018. Okay, looking back a long period of time down here. So this would represent a significant milestone in the next move if it decides to continue up. You are welcome. Thank you. Can I use Gearbox EA twice, or do I have to use a different one? I mean, you can load as many what we call instances on just, provided you have enough, licenses, access passes, right? So you can have 15 different versions of Gearbox, and just like Tyler does. I don't know if you guys ever follow any of Tyler's posts on my FX book, but he's running a bananas amount of money in different accounts with different settings, all for a reason. He's trying to get the software completely smoothed out. I got to tell you, as far as like him and his team of developers, this guy has just put in some just ridiculously serious effort. And I commend that. And at some point, this this effort's going to pay off with not having to adjust a lot of settings and just starting to tear if you put real aggressive settings on it. We've gotten to the point where, and Tyler's gonna be like, "Oh, dude, seriously." We've gotten to the point where I think I'm going to try with gearbox to have what's called a bananas account setting. This is an internal joke. But it has these just ridiculous settings. It's going to run on a 1 minute chart. But this is something I'd only put a few grand in, right? Just fully expecting it to blow out. But having the potential to maybe triple or quadruple that in the course of a quarter or a month, right? We had something like that running last spring before the melees of all the nuttiness in pandemic, blew the account out. Wasn't anything I was running, but I absolutely love the settings. It's just like for super risk capital only, right? Not for the only $700 that somebody can afford to trade. I highly suggest don't even think about that. I'm never going to show you guys the settings. I will not show you the account. At some point, if it does really, really well, I can come back in and talk a little about it, but I'm always concerned showing something super aggressive. So I don't show any of my futures charts, mostly because they're on another computer. Because I want everybody to focus on just getting these currencies and or the current product bench that we have out mastered first, and or mastering your arrow trading before we get into other stuff. But we'll introduce all that down the road as we see fit on a risk discussion scale. Do you have to have a special subscription? No, you don't, Jeff. It's now keep in mind, here, I'll look at the monthlies, I'll show you. This, we don't have a lot of data on that, but look at something that's been trading for a long period of time, okay? You can go all the way back to data starts in here. The problem with, when the euro was first conceptualized and brought out as a centralized currency in the mid 90s, this data is not that good. So regardless of, you can use it for back testing. I would really only care about data that started around 2000, because this was like the Wild West, right? And we don't even have like really great data from back in this era, even though we were beginning to get really technologically advanced as far as trading systems goes. I really typically, with anything I back test, I want to start around 2000. None of these support and resistance levels over here mean crap at this point. Even most of this stuff doesn't matter. It's only the stuff that's irrelevant to the last few years. Does that make sense? Good questions, guys. You throw some light on. Zarina, read your question that you wrote to me, because I don't understand it. Are you talking about NZD CAD? Let me know. GBP NZD, let's take a look at that. We go GBP NZD. When's the data start for this? 2002. All right, so daily chart. Okay, see the reversal? It shouldn't have been a surprise. Was also the 200 moving line. See that right here? See if we can make this bigger. See how we poked our head above it, but we finished under it, which tells me the next day we're going to reverse. See that? Not quite a hammer reversal candle on the daily here. That's close. So that usually means we're going to right back down. But NZD's been going a little wild. So, but this acted fairly well. You need more than 18 months, Jeff. I'm looking forward to that video on the shade, Steve. Yeah, me too. By the way, guys, I'll be broadcasting. I know my son's like all excited about this. I'm going to be broadcasting. We're actually taking off to our mountain house, do some skiing, and I'll broadcast on Tuesday from the lake. It'll be freezing. I'll be in coats, but I'll go live, and maybe we'll just have a lakeside chat about risk and not show any charts, right? How's that sound? Got to get some new ski gloves. So, what am I missing here? NZD, we talked about that. Bitcoin. Yeah. So I had a client actually call me, this 85-year-old client. He's like, hey, should I buy some Bitcoin? So here's what I did. I took a picture of the monthly chart of Bitcoin, and I actually sent it to him. So this is a monthly chart of Bitcoin, right? And I asked him, do you think you should buy? He's like, well, everybody's saying it's going to go to 500,000. Like, okay, but don't you think it's going to correct first along the way? Yeah. Risk management. All right, so let me just take a quick peek through chat here. You guys are all active today. I like this community. Yeah, I have to talk fast because sometimes I got a lot of stuff to get out, and quite frankly, I'm always best when I'm in the zone. Thank you. Red folder Tuesday. Yeah. See, this is Chairman Powell's testifying for 2 days, right? It's like that Humphrey Hawkins, type of testimony where he's basically answering questions. Most of it's is released Q&A. Can't really have, in many cases, some surprises, but it was during this particular event back in, when was it, that Alan Greenspan, our current chairman at the time, mentioned a comment about irrational exuberance because of the markets. This is back in the tech boom of the 90s all the way through the top of the tech market in 2000 before it absolutely crashed into 2003. So you always want to be aware about, Powell is a little more reserved, and he doesn't have all that Fed speak and confusing ass language that Alan Greenspan had. But any of these central bankers can always get caught on a hot mic or something, right? And saying just like I think the stock market's in a bananas bubble level across the globe, or can you believe Bitcoin's close to 60K a coin? That's all it takes, guys. And your risk management, did you throw all your stuff out the window? Man, your stuff's going crazy on you. So best to just push the flat button and hold out for calmer days. All right, so I think that's pretty much it. I got to get ready. NCD CAD, is that your question? We did go over DXY. Let me just show real quick because I just sort of glazed over it. Here it is on daily chart. Okay, DXY, dollar. Remember, there's different components of DXY. If you can jump into my Telegram channel, I actually have a little post. I think it was about 2 weeks ago where I broke down components of DXY. If you want to understand what its makeup is. Stuck inside a tight zone though. I got that taken care of. Let's see. NZD CAD, huh? Let's take a look. It's a crazy currency day in exotics. All right, so daily chart, it's actually been acting quite well. So I'm not, you keep in mind that statement, Zarina, that you made. I'm not sure I can validate that. So I don't know. Obviously the currencies may be somewhat new to Gearbox in terms of its list of currencies. I can't verify how it's actually done across all the accounts. So that would be a question, by the way, you'd want to ask Tyler in his call on Friday. So if you are not attending that call, I highly would suggest, get in there and ask that question. You can get a direct answer from the man. Always be nice to Tyler, guys, because if you're ever down in Miami, he's got a boat. In any case, all right. So I'm out. Say your prayers, and I'll kill myself skiing. And I will see you guys on Tuesday. So be well. Party heavily this weekend. May the trades be with you.